Bill Gates says political polarization may bring it all to an end and could even lead to a civil war. Um, so basically, Bill Gates is predicting that there's going to be a civil war in America.
Which I'll take it down.
If you scroll down, I think it's got his actual quote that he said. Here, I admit that political polarization may bring it all to an end. We're going to have a hung election and a civil war. So he's in the headline, they've used the word could, but he's not used the word could. He said we're going to.
We're going to have, yeah.
So, which I think is like quite strong word to use. You can take it down now if you want. We'll just talk about it. But obviously, you know about Bill Gates being in the WEF and being fucking powerful geezer.
Yeah.
He was involved with the pandemic and all that shit, and now he's predicting a civil war in the US.
Well, yeah, he went from building Microsoft, so head of a tech company, to being the lead on the world's health. And now he's, well, whatever you would put this category in, politician now, I guess.
But that is sort of, when I read it, I thought, what is this what the World Economic Forum want?
This was what we've said. I think we said it on our China episode. Civil war is brewing in the West. And for him to say that makes us, like we were saying earlier, or I was saying earlier, that everything that's going on in the world at the moment, it all seems to be pointing to this great reset. What does it mean for civil war? Is that just another way to speed up this great reset?
So what could like potentially cause it is when the next election in America, when the public are going out to vote, they're going to bump into, like, the left wing will bump into the right wing, and I reckon you'll see loads of arguments and fights at polling stations.
Yeah. When is the next election?
When was he elected? 2020?
2020, I think.
Was it 2021? 2020, I think he got into power in 2021.
2021. Yeah, well, yeah. So Jan 21, he started his.
So the next one will be 2024.
Yeah, at the end of 2024, won't it?
Yeah, I think it's like November. So, which from all my research and your research as well, and talking to people, it kind of falls in line with everyone, like the people I've spoke to as well. They're thinking that 2025 is when things are going to start being implemented.
Yeah,
properly from the for the Great Reset.
Yeah, they're just. I think, what did I message you saying before? They've been moving their pieces. It's like they're playing chess, and they've been moving their pieces for a while now. But these next 2-3 years, they're gonna finish their game.
Yeah, and that's why they're so confidently talking about everything.
But they must, because it's obviously been a conspiracy theory where it's not been. That's when it was. Everyone was like, "Oh, is it happening? Is it not happening?" It hadn't been set in stone. They hadn't got the foundations. Maybe they hadn't got the right people involved in the thing, which they've got today. They must have been doing this for ages. But as soon as there must have been a turning point to say, right, everything's ready. Because if there is a big pushback against it, which obviously there fucking isn't really, then they must have been in a fit position to say, if we release it all now and there is a big pushback, we're too far ahead for anything to get turned around. Yeah. So with all of this that's happening with civil war and all that stuff, that's only playing into their hands. They probably want that. They're probably annoyed that there wasn't more of a pushback with all of the shit that they're putting out.
Yeah, well, there's been there is some pushback, but not nowhere near the amount there really should be. And what kind of makes me think about is how back in the day it was just considered a conspiracy theory. Do you think they purposely leaked bits of information out so people would just think it's a conspiracy theory? For when they actually do it, people just write it off as conspiracy theory.
The situation which you was explaining that we're in today, for example.
Yeah. So like now when you talk to somebody on the street who's probably heard about this because like they would have heard about global agendas and things like that because we're all at an age now where you know somebody who you probably might have thought was a bit loopy back in the day talking about it.
Mm.
For now, like for us going up to somebody, they are just relating it to that loopy person that spoke to me 10 years ago about this.
Yeah.
It's just talking the same garbage.
Yeah. They have that perception that that's mad talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what they've still got 10 years on is like, oh, keep away from that conversation. Because I don't want to be perceived in the way I perceive that guy back then.
Yeah. And this was like, at first, I was a bit worried about talking to people about it because I didn't want that perception of me being a nut job.
Yeah.
But now I just thought, I think, fuck it.
Well, actually, it's funny you say that because if they did plan this out a long time ago as a conspiracy theory, then it's just a big perception game, isn't it? Do you know, like I was explaining to you that time about the two circles? One was red and one was blue.
Yeah.
And the guy, well, basically, what happened was there were two circles, one red, one blue. This guy got them on a screen in front of the class, and he said to the class, one's bigger than the other. Put your hand up if you think it's red. Put your hand up if you think it's blue. Then half of them put it up for blue, the other half put it up for red. And he said, put your hand up if you don't think it's any, and no one put the hand up. And he said, they're both the same size. You just believe me from that one sentence. So think about what like, global superpowers are able to do just with the mass amounts of media control that they have on you. So it's all just a massive game of perception to these lot. Whatever they can make us as people perceive, then sticks as truth. Like I don't know who is trying to push the perception that there's infinite amount of genders. People are obviously believing that, they're latching onto it. So perception. There's not. Scientifically, there's only two. And in common sense, there's only two as well. But because they've been sort of brainwashed into thinking there's infinite, they now go ahead and believe it, and they're big advocates for that as well.
Yeah. It's all a massive game of perception and just manipulating human psychology.
Yeah.
They don't want people to think critically because they just want people to think what they tell them.
Yeah.
And it's the people that are thinking critically who it's their jobs to sort of make the other people aware. And it's a hard job, I think, because why would somebody trust? Like, I'm saying it from like their perspective. Why they would think, why would I trust you over BBC or CNN or whatever?
Yeah, it's a hard job because you're trying to influence or like that herd. They've got that herd mentality. So let's say, for example, us doing this channel, we're part of a small group of people who are on this pushback. But when you go to someone who follows BBC, they're part of the herd. So when we say, for example, no, this is actually false and this is right, they'll be like, well, there's only like 7 or 8 people that I can see that listen to you, whereas there's 70,000 people that listen to them, so they must be right.
Yeah.
And then they just jump on, and then everyone else would just be like, no, we've got to go with these lot because everyone else is following them, so they must be right. But then it comes to a thing as well where people are too fucking lazy to think for themselves as well. So, I mean, I've talked about it before, like the ego being a massive, massive thing. Is probably one of the biggest things that plays a role in anyone's life is ego and how you balance your ego because everyone's got one. These people who are, I'm not going to say they're dumb because they're not necessarily dumb, but they just don't want to think too hard or too outside the box or critically think as you said. But then you've got people on the other side who are trying to push back and critically think about what's going on. And put, like we said, we're putting all these pieces together and we still can't understand what the fuck's going on. But we're trying to think and sort of figure it out rather than just listening to what we're told.
Yeah.
So these people who listen to what they're told, they're not critically thinking. They're not working on their ego. Their ego controls their life. So when you try and say you're wrong, they're not well equipped enough to say, "Oh, actually, I might be." They're not open minded enough because their ego's telling them they're right. Whereas people on the side of what we're doing, for example, we've kind of like set ourselves apart in the sense that we critically think about things. So if someone says it could be this, then we'll be like, hold on, let's have a think about it. Let's see what are the reasons for that, what are the reasons against it, and sort of weigh up that way. We won't just be like, no, it's wrong. This is what we're doing. Like we were saying about you wanting to find someone who's pro the Great Reset, so you can actually understand what their thought process is behind why it would be good, because we can only see the negatives from it.
Yeah, exactly. Like we want to try and understand both sides of the story.
Yeah,
that's the only way you can try and figure out what the hell is the truth. If you don't understand both sides of the story, you can't find your own truth. Because I don't know what, like, nobody knows what the truth actually is. But you can try and work it out. And if you've only got one side of the story, you're only hearing one. You think that's the truth and that's it.
Yeah.
But if you don't listen to the other side of the story, you're never gonna be able to find the truth out for yourself, whatever you think the truth is.
Yeah.
Because you only understand, you're very lopsided the way you're thinking.